go? Okay. All right, I think we will go ahead and get started. So, and don't have my little gavel thing, so. So welcome everyone, it's 5:30 on June the 18th. This is the Town of Star Valley Ranch Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday, June 18th at 5:30. We do have a quorum. We do not have all members present, but again, we have a quorum. So, and let the record also show that we have town building official Kazir in attendance as well. And then we also have Mr. Meshke here regarding the variance when we get to that on the agenda. So thank you for being here. With that, I am going to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Sommerfeld. A second, please.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Dalton. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the agenda is adopted. All right, now we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from the May 28th meeting. I think everyone received those on email. Were there any changes or questions on the minutes?
Nope.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the 28th?
So moved.
The motion is made by Commissioner Sommerfeld. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second from, was that?
Me.
Commissioner Dalton, sorry. You were very quiet for a second.
Yeah, just put me down.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, hearing none opposed, the minutes are approved from the last meeting. Okay, moving on. So we're going to move into a public hearing for a request for variance for 522 Walnut from Davis Meshke. I just want to, for the record, state that I know this variance was discussed at the May 14th Planning Commission meeting, which unfortunately was out of town and couldn't be here for that. My understanding is the variance actually wasn't on the agenda for the May 14th meeting, but it was discussed and that a vote was taken. However, there was no recording of that meeting, and unfortunately no one took minutes and no vote was recorded. Also, since it wasn't on the agenda, appropriate public notice was not made to send out an email, notify the public that we were going to have a public hearing. So with that, at the last meeting we held on the 28th, we discussed that and I decided we should revisit it and officially at this meeting tonight. So that is what we're going to do. Also to clarify the procedures for request for variance per our ordinances, that is heard before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will look at all the merits of the variance and follow the process in the ordinance for either approving or denying the variance. If the outcome of that vote is not satisfactory, there's an appeal procedure that would go to the town council from there. So that's how the process is going to work tonight. So with that, I'm going to ask the commissioners to let me know your thoughts on the variance. All the documentation was sent out ahead of time. This is a request for an accessory building shop space at 522 Walnut Drive. And there's a couple of, based on my reading, there's a couple of things. There's two variance issues. One is from the plans, the shop space, the building, the structure is slightly under the 600 square feet required of an accessory building in our ordinances. And then the other question that has come up has been the use of that space for dwelling or to accommodate out-of-town guests or family members when they come to visit, if there's not room in the main house. So those are the two items. And let me know what your thoughts are on that. I did send out also here, and there's a couple printed out here. The information packet that I sent out previously with the relevant Town of Star Valley Ranch ordinances, the definitions, and anything I could find that I thought was relevant to discussing the variance request tonight. So if you need a copy, there's a couple of copies here.
Could I have one of those?
You bet.
Yeah, I'll look over it too. I read it. But
I've got it on my laptop here. The printer was down at Town Hall today, so there's minimal copies of things, unfortunately. So, let me get my copy out here. All right, so starting off, the relevant ordinances for the town. So in Chapter 154 zoning, there's a definition section in the beginning that defines accessory building and also garage. And I highlighted the parts that I thought were germane. The accessory building definition does say at the end that such use of any building, or sorry, such use shall not include any building used for dwelling, residential, or lodging purposes or sleeping quarters for human beings. My understanding is that definition is not the same in the IRC. I didn't actually look that up, but there was discussion I heard from the previous meetings on the recording that that was the case.
There's no issue with the IRC.
Okay. And then I also included the definition for garage, because part of the conversation we've had previously is that we know there are lots here in Star Valley Ranch that have a residence and a garage, detached garage with living space, which there was the impression that that was not allowed in our ordinance. I couldn't find that specifically, and if you look at the garage definition in our ordinance, it says an enclosed structure of 3 or more sides is built next to or attached to a house with the primary use of parking or storage vehicles. So my mind, or my thoughts there are that that kind of leaves the door open for a dwelling space. It doesn't specify, like the accessory building definition, no dwelling space.
It's a gray area.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. And then I went through in section 154.25, the purposes and intent of the zoning districts, and single-family residential says this zone is intended for general residential use. It goes on to say more than that, but I just felt like that was kind of a significant piece as well. I also put in to this little information paper the accessory building requirements, which say one accessory building structure of 600 square feet or larger. So that's one piece of the variance. And then we've also previously discussed concern about separate garages with dwelling space or accessory buildings that might be used for that purpose, and the potential for those being rented out as short-term rentals. So I included the ordinance that prohibits that, which is under the short-term rental ordinance itself. It says short-term rentals are not permitted outdoors in tents, campers, recreational vehicles, attached or unattached accessory structures such as sheds, garages, etc.
Oh.
So that's ordinance-wise, that's shouldn't be an issue as it's covered. It's a matter of enforcement. And then I did also include some information about the Star Valley Ranch Association DCCNRs. While the town does not enforce those, I know that's always kind of bubbles up as part of the conversation. And actually at our last town council meeting, or maybe it was our town council workshop, a resident in attendance made a point of saying that the town council would be violating the law if we were to pass any ordinance or regulation that was contrary to the association DCCNRs. And while I appreciated the comment, we've had the town attorney answer this question for us before. So there, somewhere in here, I think I added the attorney's opinion from a previous instance where we were considering adopting an ordinance that would not have been in keeping with the DCCNRs. And I do think in reading them, and I know Commissioner Dalton, you said you had looked as well about the garage dwelling concern. I couldn't find that in there either. To me, it's a bit vague. Not that, again, we're concerning ourselves necessarily with the DCCNRs, but I just wanted to point out that I don't think those are very ironclad either. So.
Oh, really? Just said single-family home with a garage.
Exactly.
Or,
Yes, and there's no mention of accessory building.
And there's no mention of use?
Or use. So I thought that was, to me, that means that this commission should determine what we want the use of an accessory building to be. And I understand what the definition currently says. However, ordinances can be updated. So if the commission were to decide that we wanted to be more consistent and going forward, that this shouldn't be a problem, especially if the concern for renting out those sorts of spaces is off the table, I mean, that is something that the town council could certainly take up as well. But, okay, I think I've rambled on a bit here. Attorney opinion. And then at the end of the document I provided are the variance request and appeal procedures, just that we would follow. So, okay, I'm not gonna talk anymore. Please tell me what you think.
Under the 154083 variance request, is this variance presented to us to consider special circumstances or conditions?
So there are, where are the, here we go here. So yes, go ahead.
I mean, it's a unique, request, so, I mean, and I think, problem we have is in the past, we've been, allowing accessory buildings to be occupied, so that's the situation here. We got garages, we have some accessory buildings. He himself built an accessory building that they were using for a dwelling unit in the past, right?
Correct, yeah.
So that's what's kind of on the table here, whether we continue with that or, are we going to start allowing that? Because our track record's not exactly,
The best.
so, we're kind of on the fence here. We got to go one way or the other, but
It's not clear
No.
the way it's spelled out in the ordinances, in my opinion.
Right,
So-
it's not.
So you're right, you're looking at the standards for the variance process right now, and these are the things that need to be considered.
Yeah,
So
and-
yes.
As we've discussed before, the town has made variances on the ordinance that have stood for, 10, 20 years. They've made variances. And now we're being called to allow those variances to tell us how the town moves forward. Now, first, here's a quick question. Is there any documentation on those previous variances that were permitted and who permitted them?
So I don't know the answer exactly, but my sense is that they were not variances, that they were just plans that were presented that were approved, and they included those types of spaces.
and they approved accessory buildings, yes. So he's even provided the address on that location.
Yeah, okay, so,
So those were approved
Through the town.
through the town, but not through the variance process?
Correct.
No.
They were just, that was before the prior planning and zoning board, before Scott came on board and became the building official that approved all plans. Our former planning and zoning board did that,
Okay.
yeah. And we
Okay.
had, actually, our former building inspector, Brady, is here as well, so he would be the one that would go out and do all the inspecting, not on a full-time basis like.
And I was actually on the P&Z board
Yes.
for a couple of years, and this came up while we were in, so when we just, from what I remember, going off memory, we had a discussion of it years ago, and from what I remember, decided that basically, because I don't think we looked at the definitions for accessory use or building or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we went based on the IRC definition, which doesn't bar
Doesn't
any of this.
specify.
And so we allowed it, because we didn't see anywhere else in the ordinance that said you couldn't. Now, obviously, that was a mistake, because the definition's been in there all this time. I would just, it slipped through the cracks before. It's been allowed for years at this point, just through the normal permitting process and without variance. So, yeah, like the mayor said, you're basically, do you continue? But again, I feel like it should go to the council rather than, the council should change this if it needs to be changed, because the commission is gonna make a decision based on what the ordinance says, right?
So, and, that's actually a good point. So if we, based on the strict reading of the definition in the ordinance, if that's the commission determines that they need to reject, or, deny the variance, you could still make a recommendation to the town council that says, we're doing this based on what the ordinance currently says. We recommend, however, that it be updated to be, allow different uses or be consistent, whatever we would need to do.
well, as I've said before, the only guidance we have is the ordinances as written. And I think the variances, or whatever they called them, that allowed these to be built in the past were contrary to the town ordinances. And I don't think we should continue going forward with variances against the town ordinances because it's been done before. It's got to be able to stop. Now, if it's a bad, and the reason I am not in favor of this variance request is I don't think it's our business to continue to push forward variances against the town ordinances. Now, like any law or ordinances that a lot of people have trouble with, change the law, change the ordinance. If our ordinance says this is okay, I would say this is perfectly fine. Let me ask you, Scott, I think we should, because in your email today, requests for variances come to us.
Correct.
And we can either okay it, and then it doesn't go to the town council, or we can deny it, and it could go to the town council. I think Scott, in the position he's in, should have the capacity to receive a request for variance and say yes or no. I don't see why, if the ordinances say this can't be done, then I don't see why it can't stop with Scott. So let me ask you, Scott, how do you feel about these requests for variances on the town ordinances?
Well, every request is a little bit different, so, and what I think in most cases is if, if his neighbors don't care, he has an accessory building behind his house where he's not bothering anybody, no one has a problem with it, I don't see an issue with it. So, because, it just comes down to the same thing like the pole-mounted solar, I've got requests for that, and there's places in a person's lot that they can actually apply that to without, affecting the neighbors. I don't see a problem with that either, but I'm still trying to get that passed as well, so.
So,
Have your neighbors been advised of your variance request?
I don't have anyone except for
Yeah,
across the street.
he's completely isolated, so, and the location, he brought a site plan, did you bring that?
Yes, I have it here.
To give you an idea of where that is.
Good.
yeah, and I mean, we did, so the one thing about your suggestion on having, the variances stop with Scott is that it kind of takes the public process out to
Which
where,
we
and
have
I
to-
don't know if that's where you were
Yeah.
going, Jenny, so,
It-
or I'm sorry, Commissioner Stewart.
I think we have to notify the neighbors at least.
It's part of,
Yes.
yeah, the public hearing is required by law, and then also the enabling legislation for Wyoming requires that a variance go before a public
That's the
body.
variance
proposed
would
It
location.
go before
So
a public body.
I drew that wrong.
So-
The corner would be against the 10-foot setback
Gotcha.
on the side.
On there.
Yep. Yep, and so this is the house, this is Walnut, and then, so this is the back, golf
Right.
course is right here.
Okay.
And what did you say is at the back,
What's that?
beyond here?
Yes, ma'am, this is the golf course. The 6th hole, I believe.
Oh, you're on.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
there's none built on either side of it?
There's one in construction right now, there's just a foundation, and then there's no one here. The closest neighbor is this,
Oh, across the
is
street?
across the street.
Okay.
So where is the pond?
Looks like way
It would be
over
over here.
Okay,
So if we go to the end of Walnut, the
right.
pond's right there.
Right.
So this wraps around. So the
Yeah.
pond would be
So
right
is
here.
there another house on this side of you?
There's not, it's an empty lot.
But it is a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is the south side of Walnut, is that right? Trying to get in the right direction? Is that
Yeah.
Sort of
There's
southeast-ish?
north is
Yes.
in here somewhere.
Yeah, okay. Somewhere.
Yeah.
To orient us. Okay.
Yep.
From your past life in Michigan, doing planning, to me, the biggest issue here is that our ordinance currently is not consistent in how it defines the uses of garage versus accessory building. And then there's a conflict between how our ordinance defines accessory building and what the IRC doesn't say. Not that it's really a conflict, but just to say that we've adopted something in our ordinance that isn't in the IRC in that regard.
What does the IRC?
The RC pertains to building codes. This has
Right.
nothing to do with, this is ordinance That's the only thing
Okay,
that's
so the
stopping it,
IRC
yeah.
would not say anything about this.
Well, it defines accessory structure.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does, but
And it just says it's accessory to
Just a
the
minute,
dwelling
Brady,
unit. That's
let
it.
me talk to Scott.
we don't have a
You
limit.
don't need to be rude about it.
We don't have a limit on accessory buildings up here now, you know, so, basically, we just have ordinances that are enforcing, you know, basically dwelling units, which, you know, pertains to one dwelling unit per lot, so, you know, he initially wanted to build it for an office. I mean, people could build an accessory building now and come back later and basically do the same thing, which is happening, so he was upfront about the whole situation, but he lives up on the hill, and I mean, I don't think anyone will even see this building, so building-wise, I don't have an issue with it. Code-wise, there's no issue with it.
I don't have the same recollection that Brady has at all. No,
Well, if you're gonna be rude to me.
no,
Okay.
please.
I mean, we were both
Excuse me,
there.
Brady, excuse me.
You're excused.
It's not my memory that we allowed an accessory building with a living quarters in it. Accessory buildings, when I was on the planning commission or the planning and zoning board, were accessory buildings. We
Yeah, I
didn't
don't-
ask about what was inside.
Right.
It was an
I
accessory
don't know how it
building.
was presented, I mean, I'm not
Unless it
sure.
was like a big, huge thing that they were gonna put all their toys in.
Yeah, so I guess if I put it another way to the commission, would there be harm in allowing someone to use an accessory building for dwelling space? What is the harm to the community, to the residences, to the town?
It's
Especially
just-
since the DCCNRs
It-
don't identify accessory buildings, period. And
Right.
the town already allows them to be built.
And just so I have this on the record, it would not be an Airbnb. I would never,
Oh,
even
well,
if-
you couldn't from ordinance, right?
for
So
sure,
you
but
can't.
it would never be applied for short-term rental.
I brought up before that an additional residence like this uses more water, increases traffic, increases noise, increases activity. And these are issues that affect, the water affects the town, the rest affects the neighbors. We are supposed to be a single residence town. And I think that most of the people who bought here bought under those circumstances and considered that was what it was going forward. I really think we're here to serve the people that don't come to these meetings. And I can see the problems with all of those items. So, that I can say that in answer to your question.
So
And
go ahead.
I think really we're having a great discussion about this whole big idea, but what's before us is a variance application that's very specific for this lot. And so to talk about potential changes for the whole code, it seems a little premature. What we're deciding tonight is the special circumstances
Well,
that are
we're
before
gonna
us,
set a precedent.
right? Yeah.
And
But-
precedents are difficult on this town.
The precedent has been set with the other accessory buildings with dwelling units above them that are scattered across the town of Star Valley Ranch. So that precedent's been set for the last easily 10 years.
But does that mean we have to carry it forward?
No, it doesn't mean that, but.
Okay, well, that's my
But you were
point.
just saying, we were talking about precedent, and that precedent has been set way before this meeting
I
happened.
have,
It may have, it may be, but I'm personally not willing to carry it forward because it's against our ordinances.
So I think,
So we're, if a decision does come out of here today, it's gonna set a precedent.
so I
It's
think
either a precedent to agree or deny, so.
that the commission may want to just go through now and look at the standards that have to be met.
Does the applicant ever address those standards in their application specifically? I'm new, sorry. And what are the rules about that? Like, it's not, the burden of proof isn't on the planning commission for a variance. It's on the applicant to show that they meet all of the standards that are outlined in the ordinance. So,
Right, and that was when I was asking about if we had a form or something that,
the only thing we have is that page right there. We need to create a form, and make it a little more clear what it's calling out for.
So the first standard listed as special conditions and circumstances exist, which is what you mentioned previously.
Go ahead.
The special circumstances and conditions. And then the next standard is not a result of applicant, strict application is unreasonable, minimum variance. It's on the very back page of this packet here. Those are the standards that really have to be considered in order to make a decision. And I've read this, but I haven't lined it up to those conditions. So, and I guess we could, since the applicant is here, if we had questions about each of these and how he would address those, we could do that and ask.
Yeah, I think I gave Scott, or I submitted a you know, printout basically that I wrote up.
Yeah, we have that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I think that's fine. So
So I guess I'm just gonna read through this. The planning, oh, go ahead,
I
Scott.
think we still have to, I think the part of it too is he probably needs to know, somehow we gotta notify the neighbors, just like, I don't think we've followed that procedure yet, have we?
I don't know that we have, haven't seen a notification of neighbors for a variance in our ordinances,
The notice,
Well,
other than we did a notice to the public for the public hearing.
and it didn't go to the neighbors.
No.
we're also public, so I guess more or less it did.
Is there
I think this is where
a
our,
specific distance that's required that neighbors are notified directly?
no, so I don't think we have that in ordinance. So that's one of the things, for instance, I know in Lincoln County, whenever they do any kind of land use, they do a notification within so many feet of
We do it
neighbors
for
that live there.
something.
Yeah, it's not for, it was for lot combinations, I think we would do that when it was still the P and Z board, but
Yeah.
I did not see anywhere in here for a variance where there had to be a notification for neighbors, and maybe it's there and I just missed it, so. But to answer your question, other than sending out an email to the entire town mailing list, there was no direct notification. Now, I guess other than the one across the street, is that the only one that's within 300 square, is it 300 feet?
Yes, ma'am.
Probably, okay, because there's not on the other side, one's
Yeah.
in
I
construction.
mean, I think the closest, you know, if you were to walk out of my garage, the closest would be the Hemmings, which is probably.
Oh, Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce
Yeah,
and Sandy.
okay.
Yeah, so that would be my closest neighbor.
Okay,
The others that are next to them, it's a summer cabin.
okay. So as you can see, we have lots of things that we need to button up when it comes to our notification process and things like variance, and that I just don't think they're documented in our ordinances or in any kind of procedures necessarily that the town has written down. So, sorry, I was gonna make a note about that as soon as I get to one page.
So you've dealt with what variances before, right, in the past? And, I mean, what kind of circumstances are you used to dealing with? Have you dealt with this situation? Or,
Not this particular situation, no, but, it's been my experience that you, I know you submitted this narrative here, but it doesn't directly, I didn't see it at least, it doesn't directly address the 6 standards that the commission has to, consider when looking at a variance. And so I would ask the applicant to address those, and, cause it's on them to provide that information. And then go from there. And I would say that the ordinance, it says that we have to find that all of the conditions are met to grant the variance. So I think, it's a clear, it's not a clear process, it's a muddy process.
It's a really
but
muddy process
it
right
does-
now.
There's a process to go through at least. And so, and just to remember that what we are considering tonight is one specific project, not, the the whole town's code rewrite, even if that does or does not come out of this meeting. So, and I think, I don't know what's happening with the master plan right now, but in a master plan update, there's normally public input sessions or surveys that are done, and maybe, one way to address that would be, to just ask the public specifically, what do you think about accessory dwelling units in the town, and then go from there. So
Gotcha.
that could be a way to move forward in the future.
So when did you guys move in? It's been within the past year, right?
Yeah,
So-
November.
Yeah, you're, part of what we're gonna do later this fall, just kind of talk about the master plan for just a minute. We are gonna be doing some updated surveys. There was a big survey that was done a couple of years ago in preparation for the master plan, but I'm quite certain it didn't address anything like that. So that will be a good question to add to it. And then there will be some public meetings and comment period and stuff on the master plan before we get to the end of that process.
So are we gonna vote this out of committee tonight, or are we gonna table it?
Sounds like we gotta wait for the public.
I would just, before we vote, make sure that we know that the public notice was done correctly.
I mean, an email was sent out advising of the hearing tonight and that it was on the agenda, but there were no direct mail notifications done, and I don't know that that's required in our ordinance, quite frankly.
And an email is appropriate, is acceptable as a notification, it doesn't need to go to the newspaper?
Correct. For us it is, because the way the public notice is written in the statutes, it says that you should publish in the newspaper if a newspaper is published in your town.
Okay.
And we could publish in the Star Valley Independent, but we usually don't do that except for requests for bids and things like that. So us using our town email system, the website, and posting notices,
You also have the newsletter.
and our town newsletter. But yeah, so, yeah, it's a little, a little bit different. But I think that some sort of written notification, and again, probably need to go through and just double check, make sure we haven't missed that here. Yeah, I didn't see it. Would probably be something we should add to our procedure in going forward for any kind of variance. So again, we would do it for lot combinations previously, so.
Yeah, we did approve one other accessory building on someone's lot last year. That's the only variance I've dealt with. That was only because it was 2 feet within the setbacks, but, and then he went around and got approval from the neighbors, and so it was approved.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yes, please, it's public hearing, so please do.
As far as the variance, you said there were 2 pieces of the variance. One of them dealt with the size.
Yes.
What was that pertaining? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, I think
So
The size of the proposed, the design that's been drawn up is, I think, 558 square feet.
So it's slightly
And the
smaller.
minimum is 600.
600,
I
yeah.
believe.
I don't think we have a minimum. You
Yeah,
can go smaller than 200.
For accessory buildings, it's defined as 600 and larger
In the ordinance.
in the ordinance.
Where? I know it says you can have one building that's larger than 600 square feet. It doesn't say you can't have one smaller than 600 feet.
Say it.
Obviously, people can build sheds that are going to be smaller than 600 square feet. So that makes no, I know the ordinance, maybe it's ambiguous, but I'm pretty sure it was meant to say you can only have one structure larger than 600, but you're still allowed to build smaller ones.
It says.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so then why would he need a variance for the 500 whatever square feet?
Because it just, it's going against the dwelling unit of the other ones. It's not, that's not the issue. He's under that. He's
Well, right, but she said it was part of the variance. Why would he need a variance?
Well, so for
the
accessory
square footage?
buildings in 154117, it says only one accessory building structure of 600 square feet or larger is allowed
That's
per
what she's
lot.
talking
Right.
about. That's what she's talking about.
Right, so you can only build one that's larger than 600.
Right.
He's going smaller than 600.
But there is
There's
something
no limit on the
else
smaller.
that
No,
says,
there's not.
but
There's not a limit.
So why
somewhere
would
in
they
the
do
ordinance it says any structure over 200 square feet requires a permit,
Correct.
so.
Anything
So he
less,
does need the permit, but he doesn't need a variance for the
yeah,
size.
anything less than 200 doesn't require a permit.
I guess because we've been looking at it like it's an accessory building, that,
It is.
then it should meet the 600 square foot standard, or
No, there's
get a
no-
variance.
Okay, that's where I think the confusion is. It's saying you can, if you build an accessory structure larger than 600 square feet, if you do, you can only have one on your property.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying you have to build an accessory structure larger than 600 square feet. Because then you're saying people can't build a shed that's smaller than 600 square feet.
So I know what you're getting at now, and we've had this conversation in passing a few times in the council on, should there be a limit to the number of
Right, and I
buildings?
remember we've had those
Yes.
discussions, but the discussion
There's
was like
nothing.
2 or 3 structures, and
Yeah, where
that
do
was
you-
not already in the ordinance.
No, it's not, so, I mean,
But this
from that
is new to the
standpoint,
ordinance.
so,
So that's what I'm saying, I don't understand why there's a variance request for the size. The size is perfectly fine, that's not the issue.
I think that was my reading of it, quite frankly, since it was brought to the commission as an accessory building and the standard is 600.
Right, but the ordinance also says you can build structures less than 600.
Right, but it's,
So it's not saying you can't do less than, it's saying you can only have one that's larger than 600.
That's why you build it under 600.
And that makes sense. Now the other piece of that, if he's doing a garage, the
my building
garage
is
does have
$599, so I don't need to get a
So,
variance.
And that's
Garage
why,
does, yes.
so a garage, if he is under the 576 per garage, then he would need a variance for that. But if it's strictly an accessory structure, there's no limit, there's no minimum on an accessory. You can go 100 square feet if you want.
No,
You
the
wouldn't even
var-
need a
I don't
permit.
think that's
the
what
variance
it
is
says.
covering the other ordinances, that's.
Right.
I mean, this is what it
Yeah,
says.
and I agree with, the definition
One
of
accessory building
structure,
of
I
600
think is
square
what
feet or
needs the
larger seems
variance
pretty
required.
specific to
I
me,
see,
so.
yeah.
Now, my second question, I don't know if you've looked into it. Are you aware of any of the current structures that have been built this way on the range having problems? Any issues with any of the accessory structures that have had dwelling in them?
I mean, I've not, the council hasn't been notified of that. I'm gonna ask Scott if you've had anyone come forward with that.
Nope.
And I don't remember any.
Well, there's one that was a problem last year because they put it on the guy's property and it blocked his view.
Yeah.
So he was in my office the next day. You know, he was not happy about it, but
Was that a garage or a shed?
That was a shed,
that was,
wasn't it?
that
The
was,
shed, okay. I
it
know
was an
what you're
accessory building.
talking about. Yep. Yeah, it was a large shed.
But then, that's why we had to get a variance so we could move it, you know, out of the guy's way.
Right, I do remember that.
So that was an issue, that's the only issue I dealt with when it comes to, you know, accessory buildings.
Okay, back to my question. We vote this out of committee tonight, or do we table it?
What, I'm gonna take the recommendations of the commissioners on this one, since we are dealing with a lot of murkiness in terms of.
It's amazing how something like this uncovers so many things that need to be looked at.
Exactly.
You know, look, I can go either way. We voted on this once already, and it's lost, and we could, you know, I'd be fine with voting on it again tonight. I'd be fine with tabling it, because somewhere in the murkiness of our stuff, we might find something that gives us guidance, or we might find things that need to be changed. I'm not trying to delay your project. I'm trying to set how we go forward on behalf of the town. How do we go forward? Any decision we make on you will affect the entire town. And so I think that deserves some consideration. But I know we can absolutely approve it, and I know we can deny it, and then the town council can wrestle with it.
I think we definitely need the questionnaire filled out. The one that we were talking about earlier that hasn't been given to, I'm sorry. what's your-
no, that's Davis. That printout that I gave was an attempt to, Scott gave me the variance form, and I tried to go through as best I could and answer those questions in kind of a longer format printout. And so, to the best of my ability, those answers are in that printout.
Okay.
Secondly, I think it's time to turn it over to the council.
Okay.
Well, then the only way we can do that is to deny it.
Yep.
You got a table.
Or,
Well,
no,
if they table it, then we gotta take it back up again.
table
so-
it lives here.
Yeah. So Commissioner Stewart, your recommendations, I know you're new, and we're putting you on the spot based on your previous experience, which we're very happy to have.
Are you asking for a motion or are you asking?
Oh, no, just
for
asking
my thoughts?
your thoughts on, going ahead and either voting it and moving it on, or tabling it in hopes of additional information that
And
might
I'm
help
also a
clarify
little, I'm
things.
also a little hesitant to deny it because we don't want to deal with it. I mean, if we deny it, take it to town council, absolutely.
I think, and part of the difficulty in dealing with it though is that we don't have good procedures on how to deal with a variance, and it sounds like not the correct notification that would make more sense to have. So there's some things that are missing, I think, in our processes and in our regulations that are not helping
And
the
it seems
commission.
like we should probably table it and keep it here.
But I guess the other thing too is, those types of things take time to fix, and especially if there's any kind of ordinance correction, that's at least a 3-month process. And so I think we probably owe an answer.
Yeah, I'm here, it sounds like really what needs to happen is new language needs to be drafted and to deal with an exact, very specific scenario that
Yeah.
a lot of people, have in the ranch.
Yes.
So, in that way, going forward, there isn't a question of, whether this is allowed or not. It says, yeah, it is allowed, and this is exactly
How
how you
you
go
do
through the
it,
process.
right.
And so I'm totally open to that process as well, because, if not, it helps everyone after me, and so, that's the way I see it.
I would just say, as the only member of the public that's here without a dog in the fight, I do think the right decision for the commission is to say no, based on what the ordinance says. That should have been what the planning and zoning was doing before, and it should be what is done now. I think this does need to go before the council for an ultimate decision on whether or not it needs to be changed. But right now, as the ordinance is written, it doesn't seem like it should be allowed, and then let the council decide what they will with it, based on precedent that's been set. But that's my opinion as a member of the public.
So, go ahead.
You want me to go,
No,
are
go
we
ahead.
tabling, or do you want my opinion?
What?
Yes, we want your
Okay.
opinion.
Well, I would think that, so based on the plans that I've seen that are in the email, this is definitely an accessory building, not a garage, and that means the ordinance clearly states you cannot have any dwelling in an accessory building. I don't see, and I haven't obviously walked your lot, I drove by it last night, how your lot has any special conditions or circumstances that would allow us to grant a variance to you. I do agree that you waited, and this is not your fault, it's not, you do qualify for not a result of the applicant, and I'm just going through these variance
list here,
standards
yeah.
right here. But strict application is unreasonable.
That one's tough.
Yeah, that one is the one I struggled with last night. And again, that would be, that's why I said earlier, the burden of proof is on you, and I would ask you to address it specifically. But the minimum strict application is unreasonable, is subsection C. But, I think the minimum variance, you're just asking for the one variance. And so, I don't think that you meet all of the conditions that are required for a variance, and so
Which one do you not think that I meet and why?
all of them, you don't meet all of them. You might meet a few of them, but it's up to you to tell me if you do.
Well, that's why I was asking which
Yeah.
ones, if you would specifically point to which one I don't meet.
Gotta give some information.
Yeah, like, you say that, some of them I do meet, some of them I don't. Which ones am I not meeting? That's what I'm asking.
I don't think that you
So,
meet the special circumstances. I'm open to strict application is unreasonable. I don't think you meet harmony with the regulations at this point. And
So the original plan for that home that got shot down, this was back in 2023, so the old, planning and zoning committee, was to build, the main house, which would have been set back on the property towards the back. And then in the front would have been a detached garage with, space above it, whatever you want to, call that at the time. And, to have the main house, and then later we would build the garage. After the fact, it would have been separate and at the road. And the planning and zoning committee said, no, you have to build the garage at the same time you build the house. And so that took us back to the drawing board. I built the house myself, so we didn't have the money to do everything at once. So we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and redo everything and just do one house. And that plan was what is there now. So it's a garage below with some living, conditioned space in the back and then living space up top. And so originally, what I'm proposing now to do
Is the separate garage.
would have been built. I mean, that's, and again, that's life circumstances. You can't, that's not really an argument, but I'm just giving that as a,
An example.
of kind of what would have happened if I would have been able to do what we wanted to do originally.
Right. So I'm just gonna throw this out there. If this had come in as a request for a detached garage, even though you have a garage, but people have detached garages too, then it would be different decision based on, to me, what the ordinance doesn't say about what you can do with a garage space. I mean, that's just the way I would consider it.
And that's the problem I see as well, is that, and Scott and I have talked about this, is, what's stopping somebody from saying, oh yeah, there's my garage and it's just empty up top. And he goes in, he does all the inspections he needs to, it's all built to code, and after the fact, they go back in and they throw a bedroom in there and they throw, I think that's, precedent aside, that's, I see that as not a great argument, the precedent part of it. But what's going to happen is people are just going to totally subvert the ordinances in general.
Right.
And they're going to build them anyways, and they're going to do what they want with them, and they're just not going to tell people. And so I think that's even worse for the community than people, being able to have a process to go through it and say, this is exactly what I'm doing with it, and I'm going to build it to what the ordinances say and then what the code book says.
Okay, well, look, I'd kind of like to let Mr. Meshke get on with his life. And so I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we deny the request for this variance.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Sommerfeld on denying the variance. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second by Commissioner Dalton. Any further comments, questions, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The Planning Commission has denied the variance. Mr. Meshke, would you like this to go forward on an appeal process? Do you want to pursue that? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll get that on the, I think that there's a process for that. I didn't read that. I think you have to appeal within 10 days. You have to file it with the town clerk. And the written notice specifying the grounds of the appeal shall be filed with the town council. So,
So should I just resubmit all of the plans, the variance?
yes, and if you want to, I mean,
I can clean it up a little bit.
yeah, I'll apologize that you're a bit of a guinea pig in this process, since the planning commission hasn't had a variance to consider up until this point, being a new planning commission. So this is gonna allow us, I think, to improve the process and make things a little bit more clear cut for when things happen in future, which they undoubtedly will. So yes, I had already talked to the town council to tell them they might be expecting this, so, okay. All right, thank you, Commission.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? All right. We're gonna move on. There's two other quick discussion items, which one we sort of already talked about already, which was the master plan draft. So I think I've sent out 4 chapters to the commission and to the council. We actually just got all those draft chapters put on the town website, so I need to send out something to the public. And actually a meeting tomorrow with Nancy Ellis, who was one of the coordinators of the survey that was done previously a couple years ago, because we've got some things to discuss about finishing everything up for the master plan. And I would kind of like to have an updated survey, and I wrote down the question about the accessory buildings and dwelling space. So again, we're trying to drive towards getting this done by the end of the calendar year.
I did look at those two.
Then you sent me some
chapters.
comments too, at least one
No,
or two of the chapters. No?
I didn't on this last.
Not on the last two, no.
Yeah,
On the
but I
first two.
did also look at the uses, and you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really the only thing
Okay,
that I noticed on those.
all right.
One of the things I wanted to ask, just in general, because I don't understand it, is overlays.
Okay,
Now, I remember when we did have a certain number of miles or a mile outside the town that we could have something to say about. And then they went to overlays, and I have to say, I've never understood it.
right.
Help me out.
So previously, by statute, towns had a say of development that was outside of the municipal boundary within like 1 mile. And then the legislature cut it down to half a mile, and then they took it away entirely in 2018. So any development that happens around the town, other than submitting comments to the county planning and development board, we have no, previously we had approval authority on plats and master plans for developments, but we don't anymore. So then they came up with, I don't know when they did the overlays, but they have overlays for the whole county, and there's one called the Star Valley Ranch overlay that does encompass areas outside of the municipal boundary. And so the county's actually getting ready to revise their community overlays, and they've asked the town for input. So right now, there's Star Valley Ranch outside of us. Mostly the designations are rural and recreational, although there's a few areas that are mixed use.
And who put those designations on that overlay property that is not in the town?
I believe the county had zoning in place already, and then also the owners of those properties can go to the county to ask for zoning changes. The Blue Ribbon Barn's a good example of that.
Okay.
So I believe that may actually be part of our overlay. I'm not sure. It might be just outside of our overlay. But they were zoned rural, and they wanted to be rezoned to
Right.
recreational, and that got
They got the
denied.
RV park heated
They got what?
up. You got the RV people upset.
Yes, it got the RV park upset. So anyway, they're not doing that now,
Yeah.
from my understanding. Well, I believe they're gonna come back with a master plan for the entire, I think it's an 80-acre parcel, because previously they only had
Yeah.
sketched out around the barn area, and so that wasn't sufficient. So I think they're gonna revisit it, going down the road.
So I still don't understand what our power is over the
Overlay. No, I struggle with that too. So I went back and kind of dug up, I think in 2014, the Planning and Zoning Board at that time came up with the initial input for the community overlay, and they submitted it to Lincoln County. And then when I was looking at their land use regulations recently, when the chief of staff came out and said, we want to update the community overlays, please review yours and tell us if you want any changes. I compared it to the 2014, and not every single thing the town submitted made it into the land use regulations. The one thing that came to mind is, I think in what the town submitted, we said we didn't want any storage units in the overlay, and we didn't want any adult uses, whatever those are. I guess, strip clubs and things.
That's what it sounds like.
But those are, I think both of those are interesting, are in the land use regulations, that they would be allowable as conditional uses or something like
Yeah,
that,
it says
so.
conditional
yeah.
uses there. Mhm.
So I'm hoping that, that the new planning director, Ken Koleski, is really great to work with, and, you know, it's a different group of
Is
folks
he
at the county.
He's county?
Yes,
Mm.
and so I would like to think if we as a town came in and said, you know, we would like these changes, that they would really consider them strongly, even if it's part of the county and not within the municipality. You know, it's sort of a case for annexation, really. If you we want to control what happens there, then it needs to be within our boundary. Otherwise, we're at the mercy of whatever the county decides they're going to do.
Yeah.
So, even though they give us a chance to have a comment. Okay, so I'll keep you updated on the master plan. We're trying to plug along with that, but there's a lot of work to do.
Okay.
I left on the discussion topic of bylaws from previous, and in thinking about things earlier today, I probably should have called it processes and procedures development that we need to do as a commission on some of these things like the variance process.
I think I brought that up to you originally because I wanted us to have some credibility.
Yeah, so our own, I mean, other than what's in the ordinance that the planning commission is supposed to do. And there are other planning commissions in the state that have their own bylaws and rules. I don't know if you have any experience with that from the planning commission, or was it a planning commission where you were previously?
Yeah.
Did they have their own sort of rules and procedures and things? So something that we,
They're outlined in the zoning ordinance, so.
oh, okay, so it wasn't the ordinance.
You know what my request goes back to? We made a suggestion on the Bears.
Oh, yes.
And Councilman
Yes.
Merrill said we've got no business telling them how to vote.
Yeah, so,
I mean, we're down here slugging it out. I don't see any of them hanging around here. So, you know, I just want them to know that we're legit. And when we send something for them, I want them to give us credit for
Right.
making a decision that was based on plenty.
yeah, what our charter is as a planning commission to do,
Yeah,
so.
right.
Yeah, well, so that's something I think then we need to work on. I found a draft or two, you know, we could start by plagiarizing another planning commission's guidelines and then make it our own. But sometimes that's a good way to start, unless someone wants to start from scratch.
Oh, no, let's plagiarize.
All right, so we'll add that.
One other thing, I
Yes.
sent you all the information about fire evacuation
Yes.
thing. And so I'd like to see us take a look at that when we
Okay.
have time.
Okay, I did, pass that along
I
to
noticed.
town administrator, and, he jumped right on that, and I think he's had a couple of meetings with various, fire organizations in the area, but thank you for sending that, so I will make another note about that too, for us to look at. Okay. Items to be, next item on the agenda, items to be turned over to the town council. So I'll notify them next week. We have a work session that there'll be a appeal coming on the variance. And then, you know, you got time to work on it, so.
Yeah. So when, and that next meeting is when?
The town council work session is on the 25th.
Okay.
So we'll discuss that. I'll provide them the current information we have, and then or I'll wait until if you want to update anything, I can just give it to them as an updated package.
Okay.
Well, it needs to go to the clerk, and then she'll give it to the council.
Yep.
And,
Is that after the P&Z meeting again?
I'm sorry?
Is that after the P&Z or the planning commission meeting again?
Well, so that was the next topic I had, is so the town council is planning to have a work session at 6 p.m. next Wednesday, the 25th, per our regular schedule, because I asked for our meeting from last week to be pushed to this Wednesday. I wanted to ask the commission, do we want to skip next week? Or do we want to change our meeting time a little bit? Or we could just have our next meeting, which would be on the 9th. I don't know right now what would be on our agenda for next week.
Well, I've got family coming in on the 25th,
Okay, so,
just about this time of the day.
okay, so probably not good for you next week.
Not for
That does
me.
it.
All right. So,
Does anybody aware of anything coming at us?
I mean, haven't seen any lot combinations or not aware of any other, variance requests. We don't have an annexation petition submitted yet. So,
Well, I'm fine with that. And the other thing I want to mention, I don't know if it belongs in our charter or what, but we've been, since December, we've been hijacked several times by things we never heard of that come to the meeting tonight, and you got to decide right now.
right. That shouldn't happen.
I want to put something in there that says we get at least some time to look that over before we come here.
Absolutely. So that, again, the discussion on the 14th of May, which was about this, it wasn't on the agenda, so I don't know how it came about. I knew about it. I think you had sent an email that
Well, we got
It's pretty-
hit with the Blue Barn, we got hit with these commercial buildings.
Yeah, so-
And then Mr. Meskey's, not his fault, but we walked into this too.
Yeah, without having the information ahead of time,
Yeah.
so we'll, gotta work on that. I think we're doing better the last week or two, so keep working on it.
Well, can't change everything
No.
overnight.
All right, then we'll plan to skip next week's meeting, and the next one will be on the regular date, which would be
The
the
9th.
9th of July. Okay, and if something were to come up in between that we need to come together sooner, I'll notify everyone.
Okay.
Okay? Action items for the next meeting, don't have any just yet. Well, I've got a number of things to I'll try and push some things out, such as some draft bylaws